This video is a summary of what I know related to making Git repositories ignore certain files and folders for the project. .git ignore for the specific project is the most important thing we're going to talk about here. There is another ignore file which is in your Unix user's home directory. That's called a global ignore file, because whatever you set in that file to be ignored is going to apply to all the projects that you build when you're logged in to your user account in Unix or Linux. So this .git ignore file is going to be on a per project basis. It's bad to rely on the global git ignore file because collaborators who are working on the same project may not be ignoring the same files that you are ignoring, and this can cause a problem. All of you have to agree on what needs to be ignored. I'm going to show you one of my sample git ignore files. Okay, this is the content of my .git ignore for this project up here. Okay, now let's put this to the side. .git ignore lives in the project folder. See the .git hidden folder? Right next to it is .git ignore, okay? So this is where the .git ignore file lives. It lives in the main folder for your project, right next to the .git folder. See, right there I said it. Okay, now I'm going to show you the Git Ignore sample that I have, and I'm going to talk about those three things. Wildcards, wildcard patterns. See this? That's a wildcard pattern. It uses the asterisk to specify that all zip files should be ignored. Also, all gzip files should be ignored. Now here, I have a log folder, but I'm using a wildcard pattern to narrow down what is going to be ignored. For example, I don't want, let's say I don't know why I would have a script in the log folder, but let's say I do. I don't want that script to be ignored from my repository, so that's why I have this wildcard pattern. The third thing I want to point out here is the character for making a line into a comment. It's the £. Also notice the structure of this file. Every line has a file or pattern in it. Also notice here, there's the not sign right in front of this pattern, which means I want to exclude this pattern from the general rules, which include this other pattern. Okay? Now, with your .git ignore, you're going to want to commit it just like you commit any script in the project, because your .git ignore is part of the project, and it's to be shared with collaborators. Things that you should have in your git ignore: compiled binaries, zip files, log files, database files, operating system generated meta files. I'll show you that one. That's an important one. See that pesky DS store that always shows up everywhere where you don't want it to show up? That's generated by Mac OS X, okay? And then uploads, okay? You don't want to be putting photographs or PDF files in your repository as part of your project. Now there's two resources that can help you if there's some information that you didn't find in this video. Okay, this is one of them. And the other one is right here. Okay, so that's two URLs. Now I'm going to show you that I do have a global ignore. Okay, let's go over here. I'm CDing into my home directory. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm in my user's home directory on my Mac. Okay, we have .git config here, and then we have a .global ignore. Now let's see what's in this global ignore. Cat .global ignore. All right, I have this DS store thing, Apple Double. I got these from somewhere. Okay, generally speaking, it's not a good idea to rely on a global ignore file. But I'm just showing you mine, and it doesn't have much of anything that's really that important to any specific project. Okay, but you do want to manage the ignoring stuff on a project basis. Okay, Now I'm going to show you what makes this file the global ignore file. I'm going to do cat.getConfig. Okay? Right here, excludes file is .global_ignore. That's what makes that file the global ignore file, okay? Now remember, for me to add this line to my .getConfig, I did not add it manually because then I may mess up my config file. The way to add it is to find the specific get command for editing this line in the .getConfig file, okay? So I showed you its line in getConfig, and this is what I just told you here about editing it. And that's it.